It's a classic question. What do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be a philanthropist? Do you want to be a billionaire? Do you want to be an oligarch? These are the questions we are asking as we review this new album from Jesse Wells titled Pilgrim, the second album of this year from singer-songwriter, folk protest music guy Jesse Wells. You can catch him on TikTok, you can catch him on YouTube, catch him on Spotify, but no matter where you find him, he will probably just now be releasing yet another song because him and Josh Johnson are basically the quick reaction force of their respected genres. Jesse Wells with folk protest music and Josh Johnson with stand-up comedy. Take any topic, give it a day or two, and they will be out with a new song or a stand-up routine talking about said topic. So a lot of people are calling Jesse Wells the Bob Dylan of our generation, and honestly, I don't disagree with that. Again, the guy is super consistent, he's always putting out new songs, and now, again, 2 albums, 1 year. I look forward to reviewing his third album later on this year, probably in October, November, at this rate. So yes, Jesse Wells is at it again, and here we are with yet another review. Definitely like and subscribe if you like the vibe. Check out the Patreon for exclusive videos, or check out some of our other videos talking about other protest music. We got Prophet Gandhi, Rage Against the Machine, System of a Down, Dropkick Murphys, Fishbone, Scars on Broadway, the list goes on. Also drop a comment about any protest album or band that you want to see on this wall or reviewed in the future. So starting off with track 1 of this album, titled We're All Going to Die. Accurate. This is a pretty somber start to the album. It starts off pretty slow, builds a lot of tension. Jesse goes on to say that from what he can gather from the internet on his cracked ass phone screen, looking at the memes, he's come to the conclusion that we are all going to die. Relatable. Also that the red hats are approaching on the horizon, that it felt like choosing between AT&T and Verizon. Either way, the service sucks and you can hardly talk. So this will actually be a recurring theme throughout this album where Jesse talks about the political parties, the Democrats and Republicans, the left-right paradigm, and how there's not much of a distinction between the two. Which again, I said this on my Fishbone review, I think historically that is in fact accurate. However, in modern times, you have kind of the Democrats falling over into free fall, and then you have a cult on the right headed by Donald Trump. Also, Scars on Broadway had this same theme. So while it is true that both political parties do have their fair share of corruption scandals, they still have liars, politicians, of course, people seeking power, the things that we all know, taking money from the lobbyist, taking us into new foreign wars, slowly eroding our civil liberties. So while I don't necessarily disagree with that analysis, I still think that we need to make a broad coalition of people from the left, people from the right, coming together, no longer kicking down at people below us, but instead striking at those at the top, and by striking I mean doing strikes, doing boycotts, doing any kind of organized resistance to take the power back. If we are going to clap back against this kleptocracy, which is exactly what I said in that Fishbone review. But for real, Democrats, Republicans, reasonable minds can disagree on policy, but we need to be united against corruption, against abuses of power, against human rights, and not falling victim to apathy or numbness in the wake of these rolling thunder headlines. Anyways, going back to the song, Jesse goes on to say that they said there's going to be change, but did they tell BlackRock? BlackRock, of course, the biggest investment firm in the world, because if there is to be change, we need that approved by our corporate overlords, so we just need them to co-sign, and then we can have the change that we want, right? Right? The song also describes just going through a natural disaster, but you still have to get to work on time because your boss is a jerk, and being alive cost money. And you still need that money, you still need that paycheck, because even though you might already be going through some shit, you still need that money, otherwise you will be falling on even harder times. There's also another funny line where he says, some call it the fascist, multinationalist, globalist cabal. I say, whoa, buddy, don't go getting all clever now. And just to input my own bias here, what Jesse could be saying is that, yes, there are people that, of course, huddle together together in those dark, shady rooms. You do get that to some extent. You see that with the Bilderberg group. You see it with other prominent meetings of powerful, connected people. But on the flip side, there's also the potential to just kind of blow things out of proportion. When people mention the deep state, they don't really have any fingers that they're pointing to besides just, again, this shadowy cabal of people that are pulling the levers and pushing the buttons. And that sort of general, vague overtone of what they are describing doesn't really get at the heart of what is actually happening, where you do have cabals of powerful people, but it's more in a competing interest struggle to gain the most influence with governments, with corporations. But you really don't have to dive into conspiracy territory to look at how things are actually going. Look at genuine headlines that are just open to the public. Consider the fact that maybe there's just interests of the rich and powerful that just become aligned. So you don't necessarily need that secret cabal. All you need is shared influence, shared interest. And maybe that's what we need as the common average person. We need shared interest in our future. We need a shared interest in our country. And we need a shared interest in each other, because that's how you build empathy. That's how you build rapport. That's how you build actual community strength. Instead of cage fighting online to score imaginary political points, which is a point that was made on the new Scars on Broadway album. So much like what Darren was saying on that album, we need commonalities, we need shared struggle, because we have so much more in common with ourselves than we do with those at the top. And also we have way more in common with those below us than we do, again, with those at the top. Lots of rambling today, huh? Jesse ends this song, I still can't believe we're still talking about the first song, saying, "We're all going to die, but love is free." Nice. The next song, Changes in the Air, not to be confused with any kind of Bob Dylan song. There are a few interesting lines, again pointing out the left-right paradigm, saying, "I know that both sides of the things that we're flipping are on the same coin." Again, two sides of the same coin, two wings of the same bird, two soft drinks, Pepsi and Coke, Verizon and AT&T, fries and potatoes. The chorus says that for things to stay the same around here, there's gonna have to be some change, which is an overall very good sentiment. You really cannot avoid change. But then things get very interesting in the next verse, where he talks about the Saudi prince. "Tell me what you've seen, I'll tell you about them brown-eyed Midwestern women listening to Bad Company." Again, super interesting line, because of course the Saudis are conducting a war in Yemen. They are hacking journalists to pieces. Just general fuckery, juxtaposed with that Midwestern woman presumably safe, probably in her car, making a TikTok, listening to the song Bad Company, which is a song about war. On a super quick side tangent, so Hassan Minhaj, the comedian, he had a hilarious story about the Saudis on his second to last special, I think. Highly recommend Hassan Minhaj if you like this kind of protest music. He's a very good comedian, also speaking out on these issues. Also Josh Johnson, if I didn't say that already. Next we have the song Gilgamesh, which for those who don't know, this is the oldest written story in human history that we have found, that we are aware of. It also deals with a flood, which is crucial for the opening line here, where he says, "I told Gilgamesh goodbye and rode off onto the great flood with my raft made of Timu plastic," which of course climate change is driven by human activity, therefore you have melting ice caps, and then you also have the nanoplastics leaching into the ocean, so of course the Timu plastic riding the flood is actually pretty poetic, given the fact that we're talking about Gilgamesh and now we're talking about the modern day. Jesse does this a lot, where, I mean, he really is quite the poet, quite the wordsmith, very well read. There are many literary references in his work. The song continues, "I rode the surge into America on my Earth Betrayal boat," which again, I think Earth Betrayal boat just means that the microplastics are leaching, getting into the fish, getting into our food supply, getting into us. That's a problem. Also, there's a potential nod to Mr. Mark Zuckerberg of Meta fame, sporting that gold chain of his. The song calls him a mob boss who is replacing workers with AI wherever he can. And I'm gonna nod to the contributors over on Genius.com for pointing that out for me, because I would have missed that. The song also depicts people crying crocodile tears while they scroll on their phone, while the reptiles navigate the pits that their slaves have dug. Again, potentially invoking a bit of that conspiratorial thinking where people think that those at the head of government, that those at the top of the corporate ladder are actually not human at all. They are reptiles. But here the song depicts people, again, looking at their phone, crying, either because of the things that they see or they're crying for attention. While the real reptiles, you know, the people, again, at the top thinking Mark Zuckerberg, they're navigating this world, this digital world, this now AI world that their slaves, or the people working for their companies, have made. There's also a nod to Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged, and possibly Peter Thiel. I saw Atlas teaching Peter and his pay pals all how to shrug. Some say that the dead will rise again. I say maybe they will, if only just to vote. Because of course here we are in this tech-fueled oligarchy sponsored by Palantir, by Meta, by OpenAI, and things are just not looking great. And so I think what this line is showcasing is that even with all of these elections and all of these power grabs at play, it's so egregious that now people are regretting their vote so hard that they would actually rise from the dead just to vote again. Because again, holy shit, things are looking not great. Moving on to the next song, Philanthropist, which is actually my #1 recommended song off this album. Definitely give this a listen if you've, 1, never listened to Jesse Wells, or 2, like Jesse Wells but haven't heard this album, or 3, I don't even know. If you've never listened to Jesse Wells, definitely check out this song, Philanthropist. This song is actually a musical rendition of the same point that Anand Giridharadas was making in his book, Winner Take All, that when it comes to philanthropy and the ultra wealthy, there's a playbook for this shit. You saw it during the Gilded Age with Rockefeller and Carnegie. You see it now with the billionaire class. And look no further than Bill Gates, who ran a literal monopoly, became the richest man in the world, and then afterwards spent the rest of his life conducting philanthropy, which I'm not even discrediting his work because he did do genuine good in the world, but he did it all as a way of saying, hey, I'm giving away my money. You don't have to tax me anymore because I'm giving it away. Look at all these foundations that I've made. Look at all these charities that I've provided for. You don't need to raise my taxes because I'm already giving it away. I mean, what do you guys think? Should the ultra wealthy be able to hoard their money, or should they be taxed on that money? And even after getting taxed, you still have so much leftover cash that you can still fund to those foundations, those charities, those causes that are so near and dear to your heart. There's no reason why you can't do both, because no one can grasp the fucking concept of $1 billion, let alone some of these people with tens or hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's one of the main points that Anand Giridharadas was making in his book, that all of this philanthropy is basically a well-crafted diversion away from the fact that these people should not be allowed to hoard these vast fortunes of wealth for the rest of their lives. Meanwhile, we're getting kicked off Medicaid, we're getting school funding cut, we can't even get NPR and PBS now apparently. Actual support from the government that is run, again, by the oligarchs, the kleptocrats, the whatever the hell I'm trying to say. This is a long video. Anyways, going back to the song, so when someone asks Jesse what he wants to be when he grows up, he says, I want to be a philanthropist. I will use war, oil, and weapons as a means of making my living and funding my retirement. He goes on to imply Elon Musk, saying that he wants to be an oligarch with all of these rockets, and that he would keep both sides of the political aisle fighting while he empties both of their pockets. Accurate. and if I got bored, I would just dabble in some social engineering. The next verse, he says that he wants to be a billionaire with a big foundation. Bill Gates. And the next line I think is actually very pressing. Jesse goes on to say that we used to rule in the shadows, but now it's mask off. You're seeing this even with the Jubilee debates, where it was one progressive versus 20 far-right candidates. And it turns out that they were actually just white Christian nationals that were just super racist, very neo-Nazi-esque. There's also other lines about conducting experiments on third world country populations, like the philanthropic saints that they are. Though they never make a cure, you get a treatment plan so that you die in slow installments. That is a very good line. And the final line points out the overarching theme that all of this philanthropic work, again, isn't necessarily done for benevolent reasons. It's done to convince the public that they are worthy of hoarding these vast fortunes of wealth. There's no need to tax them higher when they are putting it to good use. Allegedly. For the next song, Will the Computer Love the Sunset? It's all about not losing sight of the present moment, about where we are as a people. Zoom out, and where are we? What are we? A bunch of primates floating on a rock through the cosmos, through infinity and beyond. Meanwhile, here on Earth, we have generals fighting over paper, over imaginary lines, and over minerals. And yet we have these petty squabbles when we don't even possess the language to accurately appreciate the miracles of the universal complexities that is life. So as we get more technological advancements like AI, will that computer, will that entity look at the sunset and appreciate it for what it is with the depth of our human emotion? Probably not, but hey, I guess we'll see in about 5 years. The next song, GTFOH, is all about getting the hell out of Dodge because they are crucifying people down the street, and now it's just time to leave. The next song, Grapes of Wrath, God, he's so well read. This song is about dealing with conflict before the clock runs out. Like if friends or family pass on and there was some remaining turmoil between you two, you of course won't be able to rectify it once certain events take place. It's going to weigh on your mind, possibly for the rest of your life, because it wasn't resolved. So you can press the grapes of wrath, sure. But is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the conflict worth the fallout in the long run? There's also another line about how Jesse sees some brand named hate on some generic human beings. People say that they want change, but they don't really know what that means. But again, the general sentiment of the song is that if you have any bad blood between you and someone else, it's always good to try to, rectify that before it's too late. So we will actually end the review there. The final song, titled Wild Onions, is actually not a bad song. It's about people essentially living in harmony. It doesn't matter what you look like, what car you drive. We just keep each other honest and live that good life, living our dreams, living to the full potential. But overall, I think this album is another excellent piece of work from Jesse Wells. Again, I definitely look forward to reviewing his next album here in about 4 months, from topics like philanthropy to billionaires to both physical and digital technology with a little sprinkle of war. Jesse definitely has a lot to say, and it's often wrapped up in literary references. He's a good wordsmith, he has a unique voice, and much like his previous albums and his previous songs, this album, Pilgrim, has a lot to contribute to this culture of resistance. So I'm giving this album a very favorable score, a B+ or 88%. Definitely check out the song Philanthropist, as it's definitely my #1 recommended song off of this album. And check out some of our other album reviews if you guys need some more protest music, revolutionary music. And I'll link the other review for Jesse Wells' earlier album this year titled Middle. I'll link that down below. So again guys, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you like the vibe. Check out the Patreon account. Check out some of our other protest album reviews. And until the next one, guys, stay well, stay safe, stay informed, and we will see you on the next video. Later.